The title of this drash on Torah Portion Shoftim is Where No One is Guilty, Everyone is Responsible. Shoftim begins with judges, kings, courts, and a very strange ritual, which I will get to later. But in this portion also is the admonition of, which is right up there, justice, justice you shall pursue. While I didn't know this passage until much later, searching for justice was already a direction I had wanted to pursue because I lived in a community well known for racial injustice. And I grew up with a kind of a defining vision that led me eventually to the Jewish faith because of the central theme of Judaism of Tikkun Olam, repair the world, representing Judaism's shared responsibility in improving and healing society. I was raised in Gulfport, Biloxi, Mississippi. We moved from Colorado in the early 1950s because my mother's parents lived there. The racial injustice of segregation reigned supreme in all institutions throughout the state. And I attended Mississippi segregated public schools through my high school graduation in 1964. But I was raised not to accept this racist culture I grew up in because of my father's convictions and my mother's natural state of compassion and empathy. And I expressed these views publicly and was strongly condemned by classmates and even some of my closest friends who thought that everything in Mississippi was just fine. In search of a like community that sought justice, I became involved with the civil rights movement locally, mainly meeting with Quakers and some other liberal churches in the Gulfport, Biloxi area. I also began to meet protesters from the north who were coming down to help Mississippians understand that not everything was just fine. Some of these protesters were Jewish, and as I got to know these new Jewish friends better in our sit-down nightly discussions, I began to deeply explore Judaism. While in my college years, I began studying with a rabbi in Jackson, Mississippi, and I formally converted in 1967. Fighting racial injustice became a vision that I always kept before my eyes. I was finishing college in 1968, just as the Vietnam War was at its height, so I volunteered for Navy Officers Candidate School and ended up in the Navy service for nearly 4 years. After the Navy, I sought a way to pursue my vision of justice. And I got a job offer and moved to Ohio to become the Fair Housing Director of HOME, Housing Opportunities Made Equal, is what it stood for, of Greater Cincinnati in 1974. In that position, I got involved with the National Civil Rights Movement, working with Jesse Jackson in the PUSH Coalition and Dorothy Height of the NAACP. With national advisors of these above groups, my agency, Housing Opportunities Made Equal, filed a suit that later became a landmark suit by using our lawyer, Bob Loffman, as the plaintiff against Oakley Building and Loan, a bank that had practiced redlining while he was purchasing his new home. Redlining is the policy of drawing a red line around an entire zip code and declaring that the bank makes no loans in that zip code. It was a universal banking practice then. Our case went through the courts all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in 1976, redlining was declared illegal. And our case was the first case to so declare it so. That case is Loftman versus Oakley Building and Loan, if you want to look it up. It's the first case against redlining. Because of the court decision, I was invited to become Director of National Neighbors, which was funded by the Ford Foundation, and it was a federation of 203 neighborhoods throughout the country, and we conducted the testing, collecting evidence to provide in support of the National Community Reinvestment Act, which was passed by Congress in 1977. And the Community Reinvestment Act provided for rebuilding blighted neighborhoods impacted by redlining. In sharing this part of my story, seeking communities of justice that I could join, it's helped me to realize just how close my own path facing racial injustice in my hometown, my home state, and finding strength in a community dedicated to justice mirrors the very core message of this Torah portion. So let's get back to the Torah portion. We might expect this Torah portion to begin with laws about justice. Instead, it contains one of the most mysterious rituals in the Torah. A traveler is found murdered. No witnesses, no suspect, no arrest, no trial. Instead of asking who did it, the Torah asks, which community must respond? This is a remarkable shift. Here's a shortened version of the story. Imagine walking a lonely road between two towns. A body is discovered. No identification, no family, no explanation. Today we'd call the police. But this isn't modern times. So, the Torah does something unexpected. The elders measure the distance to the nearby towns, and the closest town becomes responsible for performing this strange ritual, which is, they wash their hands and declare, our hands did not shed this blood. Thus, they are not claiming a perfect ending to this death. Instead, they are saying, we did not ignore this life. We did not allow violence to become normal. We accept responsibility for the kind of community we have created. And this ritual restores moral order even when legal certainty is impossible. Many of the great civil rights struggles of the 1950s and 60s were never about identifying one guilty individual. They were asking, what kind of community allows injustice to continue after Selma, after Birmingham, after James Meredith, and Ole Miss? Communities ask not merely who committed the act, but what systems allowed it. Shoftim anticipates this question, and the Torah's response is also communal. And here's where Reconstruction comes in. Reconstruction Judaism asks how ordinary people create holiness. Not by waiting for miracles, not by finding perfect leaders, but by accepting shared responsibility. God does not solve the mystery. People respond together, and that response itself becomes sacred and holy. Our Erev Shabbat service even provides a connection. Hashki includes the prayer, "Spread over us your sukkah," or shelter, of peace. A sukkah is fragile. It protects its people because people gather inside of it. And that is perhaps what the Torah Portion Shoftim teaches. Peace is not merely the absence of violence. Peace is a community refusing to ignore another person's suffering. In closing, the Torah never tells us who committed the murder. Instead, it tells what faithful communities should do afterwards. Every generation has unknown victims. The Torah asks us, not how can you explain why this happened? But it does ask, what kind of community will you become because it happened? Perhaps every Friday evening when we pray for a shelter of peace, we should also accept the responsibility to become part of that shelter for one another. Shabbat Shalom.